MVD Rewind Collection has released the 1985 Vietnam veteran military thriller action film KILLZONE. I just like saying it that way. So, KILLZONE is about a Vietnam vet who's part of a modern day, this would be 1985, a modern day, really extensive isn't the right, aggressive, realistic training exercise, putting soldiers into a Southeast Asian prisoner of war situation, and this Vietnam veteran basically snaps and starts having flashbacks to Vietnam, where he was in a similar situation. He cannot no longer tell the difference between reality and the training exercise, and just starts killing people. He starts killing the people who are posing as enemy combatants in the exercise. He starts killing innocent people, and it's up to the guy who's running this really aggressive and kind of mean and nasty training exercise to try to stop him. And his fellow soldiers to try to stop him with less deadly force. So this is a film directed by David A. Pryor, which is clearly based on the first two Sylvester Stallone Rambo films, First Blood and Rambo First Blood Part 2. Very much a lot of the vibe of those films, and the producer or writer of the film even says as much in the extras on this. And so 1985 release, which is I believe right after Rambo, if not the same year that Rambo came out. And again, could be wrong on the dates here, but certainly it's post First Blood. We know that much. And very, very low budget kind of film. This is one of a rash of films. MVD's putting a lot of these out now too. There's a lot of these coming out. There was a movie called Opposing Force that was out by another company that I reviewed recently. That this is sort of like a not as good version, or this is, you could almost felt like an extrapolation of Opposing Force, which was also about a very overzealous captain running a training exercise that goes too far. But this film is all set in some undisclosed jungle area, and it's one of many films that were done around this time in the post-Rambo era, where it was about jungle action and Vietnam vet action and Vietnam action and all that stuff. That basically they just went out to a state park in California where there was a lot of really dense greenery and fired a lot of guns. So I didn't really care for this. This didn't have enough going on for me to make it fun. It's just sort of, to me, it was sort of generic action, but if you like generic 80s action, if you like 80s action, this probably will fit the bill for you, especially if you like something that you can kind of be amused by, shall we say. For me, the acting was rather on the lower end. The dialogue was rather on the lower end. The action was okay, but it really, to me, kind of came down to not being dynamically shot so much as people shooting guns and things like that. The story behind the production to me is more interesting than the film itself, and that was a guy who'd never made a movie before who wanted to make a movie. And I guess they said this sort of, in a sense, started what became Action International Pictures, which was a company I think that David Winters was behind. David Winters, former TV and film choreographer who wound up producing tons of these straight-to-video action movies in the 80s and 90s. And you get the story, let's go into the extras. You get a video commentary with Serial at Midnight's Heath Holland and Jack Marino, who was the co-writer and producer. And it's a video commentary in that it's not, you don't see the movie at all. It's done through Zoom. So you see Heath and then you see Jack, and it cuts back and forth. And that's actually fine. MVD did the exact same thing with Heath on a release of, what was that movie? I just reviewed it. It's right here. What was it? That was LA Wars. Pardon my side of my face and my back. They did the same thing with LA Wars, and it works fine. It's cool. Honestly, unless it is an incredibly scene-specific commentary where they're saying, look at that, see that guy? Look at that color, which almost no commentary ever does. Unless they're doing that, I don't really even want to look at the movie, because to me, I'm like using up a viewing of the movie. It'll be even longer until I want to watch it again. So something like this where they're really just talking about the movie's playing, because they once in a while will refer to it, but it's really them talking in depth, face to face to each other. It's a conversation about how this film came to be, which is interesting. To me, a lot of times I'll watch films like this that I don't really care for all that much, but I find the extras very interesting. And for me, this was. And it was fun listening to Jack Marino, who's like a Boston guy, so he's got the Boston or Massachusetts accent, which is I grew up near, making reference to Channel 56, which was one of my favorite channels growing up. So it's cozy when I hear that accent. I heard a lot of that accent on TV back then. So there's also, this is kind of wild, the KILLZONE VHS version. There is an option on this disc to hit play, and you are watching what it more or less would have looked like if you popped in the original videotape. So it's got the original Vestron video The original, is that accurate? The original Vestron video logo at the beginning, and then it plays out as though it was on VHS. Let's backtrack a little and say the transfer on this is quite good. It looks as good as I think this movie could for a low budget film of the era. The VHS version looks terrible, and I'm not one of those guys that says, "Oh, VHS is horrible. The quality was horrendous." The quality was fine for us back then. The quality usually looked better than cable back then, but this version looks like it was pulled off YouTube, so it looks pretty pixelated, and it looks a lot worse than a videotape would look. I'm saying the transfer wasn't great on the videotape, and then in those days, a lot of them were too dark, and you lost a lot of detail for what detail could be in that time. So it's more of a novelty. I wouldn't want to watch it that way. And it's 4:3, whereas this film it's widescreen, or it's 185 or 178 for this video presentation on the Blu-ray. So anyway, you get the VHS version you can look at. There's something called The Making of KILLZONE, which is a 38-minute conversation. It's a static camera shot. It is filmmaker Steve Latshaw sitting at looks like almost a news desk with Jack Marino next to him, and they're in front of a green screen, and it has like the KILLZONE poster keyed in behind them, and it's just a conversation about the movie. And some of the territory covered is the same as the Heath Holland, Jack Marino video commentary, and some of it's not. So it's a little bit more of a casual conversation. Steve Latshaw, it's kind of funny. There's no cutting back and forth between people. So Latshaw's got his notes on a piece of paper, and you see him kind of reading those and looking down. So that's a slightly awkward that they did it that way, but still the content is there and it's interesting to listen to, if not look at. And then you have a photo gallery, and that is 2 minutes of stills and posters and video art set to the score. So, hey, you want to see what the packaging looks like? So it's one of these MVD Rewind Collection releases, which I like because they emulate the look of an old Media Home entertainment tape from the 80s. So you've got the little, where the media logo would be, you've got bogus video store stickers on it. This is a slipcase, and then you've got your info on the back. And then I like to say the slipcase slips off, and you've got your cover that similar artwork to that, and the back is the same. And then you open it on up, and the disc looks like the face label of an old videotape, which I always think is kind of cool. And if you take that off, you also get a mini poster that replicates the cover art. And in this case, you've got a little art from the film there, little still from the film. So KILLZONE was, for me, as a piece of entertainment, it was passable, but nothing I would probably want to watch again. Nothing I would necessarily recommend unless you're like, give me a goofy 80s generic action film that I can kind of have fun with friends. KILLZONE might be okay with that, but there's a lot I've seen that's a lot better than KILLZONE. So to me, it was kind of a weak movie, but an interesting package. If you're a fan of this, if you remember it from the video store days, this is, as far as I know, its first disc release. So it is there for all to enjoy who want to enjoy it. Thanks to the MVD Rewind Collection, 1985's KILLZONE.